In this session, we're going to take a look at EventSentry's Registry Changes feature that's part of the security and compliance functionality. I'm here in the management console. You can see that I have the complete tracking package already expanded and Registry Changes is already in there. So what this feature actually does is it intercepts and normalizes audit events generated by Windows when registry values are changed, and then essentially transfers that information into the web reports. So you can see the changes there. But instead of having to look at the raw Windows events, you have a nice report that shows you exactly which process changed, added, or deleted a specific value, for example, from the registry. The configuration is actually pretty straightforward. So in EventSentry itself, you can filter out what type of values you want to actually collect. And we can distinguish between values being added, values being removed, and then values being changed. So if somebody adds a value to a registry key or removes one, by default, we have all of them checked. And you can further filter it by the path. So by default here, it says monitor everything. So it doesn't matter which audit event is being encountered. They're all going to be transferred into the EventSentry database and normalized. But you can restrict that further. So if you happen to have, for some reason, a lot of registry audit activity, then you can exclude certain paths here. Or you can say, I only want to monitor a specific path. And if you hover over it, you can see here the explanation on how the filtering actually works, because it's based on the format, of course, that's being used in the Windows 4.6.5.7 audit events. You can further filter the activity and say, I only want to collect audit events from a specific process, because, of course, at the end of the day, it's always a process that's responsible for a registry change. So that could be regedit, some command line PowerShell script, for example, or just a process that writes to the registry. And back to that point, we only look at changes. So if there's read access, then EventSentry will generally not collect that information. So here we can exclude certain processes. So for example, if there's a specific worker process or something that you expect to always change the registry and you don't want to see that in EventSentry, then you can exclude them here. Of course, just like is the case with other audit features in EventSentry, auditing has to be enabled. So that's part of the prerequisites. So there's two things you'll have to do for this feature to work. Number one is object access registry has to actually be audited, success events. That is sort of a global switch. So without that being turned on, it really doesn't matter what you end up actually auditing. That has to be on first. So this is almost like a global switch that says, okay, now you are capable, now we can monitor and audit registry activity. The second thing you'll have to do, you'll have to actually audit specific keys, because Windows does not by default audit all registry activity. It would be way too much data. So how you do that is similar to when you audit a folder or a file in Windows. So we're going to go into regedit right here, and I'm going to give you an example of how this works. I'm actually here on this test network, and I'm in the registry of the EventSentry configuration. And if we take a look here, there's a filter groups subkey here under the EventSentry path. So you can see the full path up here, of course. So you can right click that, go to permissions. And this is a dialog that you're familiar with from editing and auditing files and folders, except that it's a little bit different because there's fewer permissions available, or different permissions available. I'm going to go to advanced. And here we have the access permissions, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the audit settings. So if I click on auditing, I can see here that on this particular key, we're auditing success events from everyone. And if we double click or click on edit and click on show advanced permissions, then I can see here that only 3 out of those 10 or 11 permissions are being audited. One is set value, create subkey, and delete. So if somebody deletes a registry value, that's going to show up, or if somebody creates a subkey or changes a value. So this is already enabled, and you can add this wherever you feel the need. And if we take a look now into the web reports, because this is where this information is going to be displayed, it's under features. Of course, under security and compliance, we have register here. We have no information here quite yet, but I'm going to go into the EventSentry management console. I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. You can actually see how you could be able to audit certain information in EventSentry through the registry. Yes, of course, I made a mistake here. So going back here, I selected monitor only paths listed below. We don't want that. We want to monitor everything, of course. So it was missing an actual entry, and we want to do any process here. So now it lets us continue. So we have network devices here. There's switch Cisco, And I'm just going to go here and hit edit, make this a note, and just for as a test, I'm going to write Cisco switch. I'm going to click here, I'm going to save this, and that was just written to the registry. If I click now here and refresh this page, we'll see that we have quite a few values here. Sometimes you'll see a little bit more than what you're looking for, so we have some general activity here as well. We're going to ignore that, but what we do have here, we see that a value was added, and we can see that number 2 notes was added, and the value, of course, that I set in the management console was Cisco switch. And we can also see what happens if I remove that again. So if I go back to Cisco switch, hit edit, hit OK, refresh this, and we can see now that the notes was switched from that the value was Cisco switch before, and it was set to nothing. In fact, we can see that the value was removed, so it wasn't just set to nothing, it was actually removed, but we can still see what the value was that was removed. Now, looking a little bit further here, so we can see the path here. So this was on the network devices. If we scroll a little to the right here, we have a caller path, so we can see who made this change, and that would have, of course, been the management console. So we know which process it was, we know which user it was. We have the logon ID, and at the very, very end, we also have a link to the actual event. So if we click that, then this is the event that we got that information from. So it looks almost exactly the same, a little bit, a few extra fields, but this is a lot easier to read, especially when you have a lot of registry changes to look through. But that's basically it. So that's just essentially a better way to display audit information. And of course, you also have it in a different database, a different area. And yeah, you can audit as many registry keys as you would want. Obviously, be mindful that it can generate a lot of data. You can see here that just this one change also triggered some other audit events that you can always manually review here as well. But in essence, and that's how easy it is to set up registry auditing in EventSentry. Again, we're only looking at audit events that were already generated by Windows, and the actual paths that you want to audit will have to be manually set or set via group policy.